Alright y'all, it's Pokemon Day. We're probably about to learn about Black and White remakes, or we just learned about them, either or. So what better time to drop a video going over my Pokemon Black and White remake cover art designs that I made. So yeah, we're gonna do it to it. Let's quickly dive on in to this design brief and these final renders. Alright, so we are going to be starting with Zekrom because I like Zekrom more than Reshiram. And I'm trying to do a background to it for the cover art, and I wanted to go with like a kind of crystalline theme, like a crystallized, shiny, shimmering background, because I went with sparkling white for the name of this game. And so I'm in here playing around with obviously the filters in Photoshop, and I found that using a transparent gradient, and then using the crystallized filter, I believe it's called, and just you know, kind of playing around some more, trying to get a good contrast between the whites and the blacks here. Then once I get a good texture, I make a diffuse cloud map, I believe, to give a little bit more gradient to these crystals here, get a little bit more contrast going on, so we can have some dark edges with some light edges to really give that like hard crystal look to the background. Then here I duplicate the effect that I made just to give me some more fragmentation going on here. And then finally I start pulling in some sparkles, as you can see, playing around with blending options. I typically use a lot of blending options when I make things in Photoshop, just to kind of give them effects that I like. Now Zekrom's tail has always been just really cool to me, so I really wanted to have this effect of like his tail is like charging up. I think that's the coolest part honestly about Zekrom and Reshiram, is whether their tails like literally are like fusion kind of engine drives looking things. So I really wanted to get like a lot of energy in the tails of these designs. Now once I'm happy with all of the sparkles I've added and stuff, I pull in some pictures of like electricity and stuff here, play with the blending options again to get rid of that background, and then start overlaying it on top of the tail, obviously playing with blending options some more. Then I add a mask to help blend the electricity a little bit more realistically with the rest of the picture. And then once I have the tail to a point where I start pulling in some more electricity textures to have electricity go around the edges of the image. And then I start putting masks on everything and start masking out bits of the electricity so that it's not too overpowering in the image. I obviously want Zekrom to be the main focus of the picture, so I don't want to just have electricity flying everywhere, you know, making the scene a little bit too busy. Now, because I forgot to record myself making the sparkling white logo, we're going to be hopping right on over to the glistening black logo. And here I'm using this tutorial I found on YouTube to make a really cool like crystal kind of fragmented looking background using like pentagons here, but the tutorial said to use hexagons, but I use pentagons for this one because I wanted to give it a little bit more of a larger fragments here for the black logo, because I actually did this for the sparkling white logo that I made, but I used hexagons that time because I wanted them to be a little bit more smaller fragments. So yeah, eventually you get this really cool like crystal looking effect going on here. And here I'm playing around with the lines because I'm actually not sure if I wanted to give all these shapes lines or if I wanted to have them just stand out and use the actual contrast between each triangle to, you know, give that sense of depth. Now I ended up actually exporting in both 3 different backgrounds here, one with lines, one without lines, and then another one with lines but different kind of line gradient going on with it. And then once I had those 3 exported out, I chose one that I wanted to use for the letters, pull it into Illustrator, and then just use a clipping mask to add that texture to the glistening font here. Now you can see me moving on the texture that I made just to get a good position on the font that I like. And then I added a gradient here using transparency to give a nice little shine or shimmer, sheen effect. I don't know what you want to call this, but you know, a nice little sheen. Now here I am just changing the font a little bit more to kind of have everything fit together nicely. I didn't really want that little T, that little point coming down on the T, so I changed that. Here I am kind of playing around with the outline to get a nice little sleek kind of outline here, using some white boxes to fill in any gaps that I don't like or that just don't look good to me. Now honestly, I like the fragment, the black crystal design that I had here, but I initially really wanted to do like a obsidian rock texture, which is incredibly hard to make on your own. So I decided to play around with the Illustrator filters to kind of make a obsidian looking texture. That didn't really pan out for me, and I tried making a black marble texture in Photoshop, but I also didn't love how that looked, so I ended up just settling with the black crystal fragment texture here. And so yeah, once I was happy with the glistening black logo, I put it side to side with sparkling white to make sure they contrasted each other and, you know, looked like they were, you know, complementary games. And then it's on to the Reshiram design. Now for Reshiram's background, I took 2 of those black crystal fragment background textures that I made, and I ended up layering one on top of the other and then changing the blending mode just to kind of make the lines between each fragment a little bit more bold to give a little bit better depth to the background. And then obviously noticing now with the black background that the outline from cutting out Zekrom from the screenshot I took from the games is very clear and bold. I use select to get a selection around Zekrom, and then contract, I think like 3 pixels, invert my selection, and then add that selection to the mask to get rid of the very bold white outline. And then I use hue and saturation to soften the outline a little bit more, and then I go in with a brush here and then just mask some extra areas that I don't really like how they look. Then once I'm happy with the outline, I start pulling in images of fire that I found on Google and start obviously changing the blend mode to of course get rid of the background and give me a cool little effect going on here. Now I really like this image of fire, so I duplicate it. I think I flip it? No, I rotate it. I rotate it a little bit here and then start playing with the positioning until I get to a point where I like, and then I start using masks to start reducing the fire and the embers that are coming off of them, similar to how I did with Zekrom and the electricity, because again, I want Reshiram to be the focus of this image, and I don't want it to look too busy and take away from Reshiram. Now, I honestly gotta say, even though I like Zekrom more, I think I like the effect, how the effect came out on Reshiram's tail a little bit better actually than Zekrom's, because it literally looks like Zekrom's tail is like a star, like a nuclear fission happening right on his tail, and it came out really nicely, honestly. Obviously I took, I think, a picture of like a fireball or an explosion, and then another one of, I think this is a star of some kind, I'm not too sure, but I found 2 of these images, put them on top of the tail, obviously masked out the bits that I didn't want being covered by the effect because I wanted to look like it was coming out of the tail, and obviously the light shouldn't be that strong on the other side of the tail if it's coming from the inside of the tail, right? Now the screenshot I took here is from Reshiram using, I think maybe flamethrower. So using some flame effects, I cover up this one little random fire spot here on the wing to kind of blend it in a little bit more, and then obviously it looks a little bit off if one wing has fire coming off it and the other, so I duplicate the effect, bring it over to the other side to kind of even everything out, and then using a content aware fill, I get rid of this random red dash that is also a part of the attack that Reshiram was using in game. And then trying to get rid of this little red speck with a content aware fill just wouldn't work for me, so I decided I will just throw a little bit more fire onto it and use the fire to hide it. Finally, I'm just doing a little bit of background effect cleanup here. I think I masked a little bit more of the embers in front of Reshiram to kind of obviously leave that area a little bit blank, so again, your eye is drawn more to the Reshiram here. I then end up adding a little bit extra embers on top and around Reshiram specifically to kind of give it, you know, a little bit more that the fire is coming from Reshiram. It's the source of the fire, so I feel like there should be a little bit more embers actually around it. Then once I get to a point where I like how everything is looking, I pull in the Pokemon Glistening Black logo. Now this point here with the layer style is not the end goal. I end up playing with it a little bit more, I think, off camera, but this was like my midway point where I was like, okay, I'll deal with that later. Let me actually work on the glistening part of this logo, because I will admit that it's really hard to read the actual glistening font, so I tried to lighten up the glistening part and then add an extra stroke around it to kind of make it stand out a little bit more. I don't know how well that worked, but I mean, I did what I could. And then finally I went into adjust the levels on the Reshiram layer here, because I feel like Reshiram, the lighting just isn't right. It looks a little bit too dark and shadowed, and I wanted again for him to stand out and pop on this cover art. So I came in, made those whites pop, and then I think from here I pretty much am done. And so now the only thing to do is to pop these on a Nintendo Switch cover so that you get that real you know, mock cover art feel. Now initially I did try to just use the full render that I made, like with the whole cover art, and put that on the Nintendo Switch cover, but I realized that it just didn't work with the way that Reshiram and Zekrom were placed on the images, so I had to export everything separately and then build everything back onto the Switch cases. And so yeah, with that, here are the final designs for Pokemon Sparkling White and Glistening Black. Now I will admit that Sparkling White came out personally, I think, a little bit better just in terms of the logo. The logo is more legible. The Sparkling font is definitely way more legible than the Glistening font, which is kind of why I wanted to have more of a solid black color. Like that's why I wanted to do the obsidian texture for Glistening, because obsidian is more solid black, so you just be able to see it. But then when I did that, I just felt like in comparison to Sparkling White, you put Sparkling White with its crystalline texture, and then you have the Glistening Black, and it's just like a just flat black kind of texture with a little like shimmering sheen, and it just, I don't know, I didn't like it. Didn't feel like it was complementing each other. The other thing that really bugged me about these designs is because I got screenshots from Pokemon Scarlet and Violet for Reshiram and Zekrom, they are really anti-alias. Like, you can just see the jagged edges on them, and it was really bugging me the whole time. But I didn't want to just go and get official art of Zekrom and Reshiram, because I really wanted them to be in like an animated kind of attacking pose or like a charging up pose, and I didn't obviously want to use anybody else's art from Google. So I decided, you know what, I will just take screenshots and do it the hard way. But yeah, if you guys enjoyed this video, drop a like, subscribe. I don't do art stuff on the channel often, but I mean, hey, if this video just magically happens to blow up, maybe I will become a Pokemon art tuber, which I highly doubt. But anyways, yeah, like if you want, subscribe if you want, and I will catch you guys next time.